So we're going to be cutting a bias strip today. I'm starting off here with a square, and it is not stretchy fabric. This is just like your muslin. No stretch on either direction when I'm pulling along the grain line, but when I pull across diagonally here, I will have some stretch. So that is a non-stretchy fabric pulled on corner to corner will give you some stretch. So we're going to create those bias strips by using I have about a 14-inch piece. If you don't have something this big, we will show you how to connect a smaller piece. So whatever you start with, have it be a square, fold it into a triangle like so. And then we're going to locate a ruler and some chalk and measure up 1.5 inches from the folded edge. Give yourself a couple marks, depending how big your piece is. Connect those two dots. And you're going to cut along the fold like we do typically with most of our samples. Put your left hand in above the scissors and then just pull along that fold like so, and go ahead and cut that. Once you're done cutting that, turn it, cut along the chalk line. And now basically we have two 1.5 inch bias strips. These are nice stretchy pieces. And to connect them, so if you ended up with something smaller, say you had an 8-inch square and you wanted to connect them, it's kind of a funny procedure to connect, and I think it gets confusing to some people. So try to explain this here to you. So you're going to take them like so and line up their edges. So you have them kind of one going off to the left and one going off to the right, and they interlock just like so. And you can slide them further apart or closer. What I'm looking for is just to create a little seam here. So right here where they intersect, where the upper one is coming and meeting the lower one, we're going to sew from that intersection to the other intersection on the other side. So we'll head over to the sewing machine and stitch right across like so. Okay, so to sew this bias strip together, I went ahead and pinned it. And again, I'm going to sew from where they intersect each other over to the other side where they intersect each other, even if my guideline doesn't maintain the same distance. So I just need to make sure that I'm at the starting intersecting point and the ending intersecting point. So backstitch starting at the beginning, and we'll backstitch at the end also. Quick little stitch here. Okay, clip up your threads. And then I'm going to trim the seam down to make it a little bit smaller, get rid of some of the extra bulk. And then when I unfold it, I have a nice long straight line. I do want to press this little seam flat and open, so I'm going to finger press it right here for the sake of speed, like so. Trim off these little extra triangles that I have. Excellent. And then you can see I have one nice long piece. That's how you can connect multiple pieces to create a long bias strip that can go around large things. So now I'm going to head over to the iron and press this down just 1/4 inch on one of the long edges. So 1/4 inch. Measure. Start your iron. Measure ahead of it. Slide the iron down and continue this all the way to the end. Here we're going to cut out what's going to be the neckline. We just need a mild curve. So go ahead and take your 8-inch square, measure down 1 inch along a fold, and then give yourself kind of a little smile here. Don't go too sharp. Have it be somewhat rounded, kind of what you see in a neckline. And go ahead and trim that so that we have that little curve there. Something like that. All right, back to the sewing machine, and we have this raw edge and the pressed edge. So we're going to use the raw edge. I'm not going to work right in the seam area because it tends to be a little bit bulky. So you can work whatever you have, if you have a long enough piece to start. Do be careful though, sometimes I've started them and when I went to fold it over, if the bias angle cut is in the wrong direction, you will come up short. So leave yourself a good tail on each end if you have plenty to work with. Go ahead and pin this along the neck edge, again lining up your raw edges. And then we're going to sew on a 3/8 inch seam. And it tends to move around a little bit, so kind of just use your fingers, feel, make sure there's no lumps underneath it, sew a little bit, readjust. Towards the end here, it gets almost easier to have it unpinned and just kind of trail it on. You get to the end, don't forget to do your back stitch. Cut all your threads. And we're going to want to trim the seam down. Take about half the width of the seam away. After you're done trimming, I'm going to press that seam in the upward position. So I'm going to finger press it here, and then I'll head over to the iron and give it just a little final press, but making sure the seam is going up towards the bias. Okay, I've gone to the iron and pressed it. It's upward. I made sure I kept my fold, maintained the fold in the bias strip. Now we're going to fold it down. There's two options here. You could fold it all the way so you have just that clean edge on the right side. But for our sample, I want you to fold it just halfway. If you were going to fold it all the way over, you'd want to make it small like this and not have a big wide piece. So, but for our sake of our sample, we're just going to fold it down to the stitch line like so, and then pin on the right side, similar to where you want to be stitching, and we're going to stitch just off of the stitch line. So we're finished pinning all along here. Confirm that you are catching on the back side the entire way. And my pins are catching, so I should be good position to sew this. I'm going to change over to my edge finishing stitch foot. If you have one, great. If not, just use your regular standard foot. Just go slow. Mine just has that little lifted side, so it makes sewing along edges quite easy. All right, make sure all your end pieces are lined up. I'm going to move my needle position over, start my back stitch, and then slowly stitch along that ridge. You get to the end here, do another back stitch, clip up your threads. Go ahead and trim down your bias strip now at this point. Don't need it to be so long. And there you go. Nice stretchy little neckline that had some non-bias fabric or non-stretchy fabric that became stretchy